There is a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. You'll hear stories about this and so much more right here on Supernatural Confrontations. What's it like to be taken in the middle of the night? Against your will. You're going to hear about that from Anne-Marie. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor, Noble Gold. $2,000, that's where gold is headed. The growth will continue throughout 2023, with gold prices remaining elevated at an average price of $2,086 an ounce. Wow. All this is according to Bank of America. And looks like they just might be right. At the beginning of December, gold crossed the $1,800 line and is still climbing. If this year has taught us anything, is that tangible assets are the only assets you can count on, like gold. It's time to open up a gold IRA. Crypto keeps on tanking, stocks are too volatile. Gold in your IRA is a steady winner. So what are you waiting for? It's not too late. Thousands of people have retired comfortably with the help of Noble Gold Investments in their gold and silver IRAs. If you've been a hesitant investor, but one of the handful of Americans who can go for gold and silver in your IRA, now's the time to act. If you get in before the end of this month, you'll bag an incredibly free 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin with every qualified IRA of $20,000 or more. Folks, we've done it. Call 877-646-5347. That number again, 877-646-5347. Or please visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. So I sat down with Anne-Marie. She was taken several times, and you'll hear her testimony, which I believe is riveting. This is happening. This is why we're dwelling on it. This is why we made the new film, The Coming UFO Invasion, exposing the dragon's dark secret. Today is the last day of the super sale. Then everything goes back up to normal. If you order today, we can still try to get stuff out, but the window is closing. LAMarzulli.net, LAMarzulli.net, all sorts of Christmas specials for you. Today is the 12th of December. We take the Christmas store down at midnight tonight. So please, folks, check us out, LAMarzulli.net, and we'll get into this, and I'll weigh in on what Anne-Marie's testimony was on the other side of her interview. So Anne-Marie, thanks so much for coming on the record, Supernatural Confrontations. Something happened to you. Tell us about that.
Well, I think it happened several times. I'm not sure exactly how many, but I do know the second and third time it happened, I remember thinking I have a memory of this. The second time it happened, I was probably a toddler, 3 to 4 years old. So I think I was probably taken as a baby or a 1-year-old. And I remember thinking, oh, this looks, familiar. Here we go again. The third time it happened, I was about 9 years old, 8 to 9 years old. And I remember thinking, yeah, this is, here it is again, thinking there's a memory and feeling like it's something familiar. So I'm not sure. My memories sort of blurred together about what happened at which of those 3 times. But I can tell you, in general, the little blurbs of memory that I have through the what I think are 3 abductions. I remember being sort of held. I think this might be when I wasn't able to walk yet, maybe. I remember being held and carried. And I remember seeing a really large head next to mine, and I was on their shoulder. And there was a really large head, and it was not anyone I knew. And that was, it really scared me. I remember being in a room which looked like, sort of like my cellar at my old house, sort of like all stone gray walls. And as I entered that room, as I was taken into the room, there was a transparent or translucent curtain. Reminded me sort of, now in hindsight, I think of it as like a shower curtain or whatever. And going through the curtain, and there's a medical setting, um, a metal table, some machines going. The room is maybe 20 by 15 feet. It's not really big. And dim lights. I can elaborate on, what every being looked like.
Please tell me what they look like. And when you're telling me this, is this the 9-year-old speaking or the toddler or what? How
I'd say
old?
it's mostly the 9-year-old.
Okay, that would
Yeah,
make sense.
and well, I know at least when I was able to speak, which I was maybe 3 or 4, I said to my mother, the skeletons took me, because
Oh,
I knew about Halloween. I knew what skeletons looked like because of Halloween costumes or whatever. And I remember saying to my mom, maybe that middle abduction, that the skeletons took me. I had no words for it or understanding.
right.
And I remember the beings being very, very thin and bony and sort of light, creamy color, light gray color. And the heads were large with very dark, kind of hollowed out eyes, the way skeletons would have.
Hmm.
And my mother would just say, "Oh, you've had bad dreams."
Right.
And
Many times before.
and there was another after the initial beings, which I did see at some point in there. I saw them passing by my crib, so that's how I knew I was very young. And the first time, because I saw these. I can remember laying in my crib, looking through the bars, and in my room was a little bit of a dim light, and I could see the beings passing by my crib. So their heads are about just over the height of a mattress in a crib, which is maybe 3.5 to 4 feet high. And I'm not thinking as a little baby, oh, that's the measurement. But now when I look back and I visualize the memory, I think to myself, that's um, so I did see that happen in my room. I saw also what I would call the little men to my mother, which were a different type of being. But as far as the abduction goes, I did see them walking in my room one time, sort of past the crib, and I did have that vision of several around the bed and looking at me from the sides and at the foot of the bed, maybe 4 to 5 beings. And the final being, which came in the room where the gray walls, the stone walls were, which I confused with my cellar in my house. I thought that happened in my cellar, but apparently it didn't. That There was a taller one, a larger one of similar look, but they had a robe on. So they were clothed. The other ones were not clothed. I mean, except for maybe something very light or simple, but I don't remember any clothing on the other ones. But the larger one, which seemed to be their boss, I got all the feelings and ideas from them of what was going on through my head. There was no words spoken,
All
but
telepathic?
yes. So I got the idea in my head because I was sort of paralyzed and I wasn't able to turn my head or anything when I was on that metal table in the middle of that room. And I was able to just move my eyes to the right. I saw the larger person. I just in my mind realized that's the boss. He's the supervisor of these other people in the room, that the one that brought me here, the ones that are doing the work or whatever they're doing, running the machines and doing any kind of work on me. So I got the idea that there was this kind of boss person there wearing a robe.
What did the robe look like?
It reminded me of the very back of my cellar in the house that I lived in, which was an old, like 100-year-old house. It was pretty low ceiling, slightly rounded walls, and the walls were grayish, like rock or cement.
Okay.
And it was pretty sparse except for some machines running. And I would remember seeing maybe some lights coming from them. It was a dim light, and then in the middle of the room was a sort of stainless steel type of table.
What when this tall guy that you mentioned he was wearing a robe? Where did the robe
Mhm. Where did it? Sorry, what was that?
what did the robe that this guy was wearing? ROBE, the robe.
Mhm. Where was it?
No,
When did it come in?
what did it look like?
Well, I'm thinking it was long for sure. It might have had a hood, um, slit down the middle, and sleeves. Maybe it had sort of a metallic sheen. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much I'm embellishing on it, in hindsight.
What did this entity look like? What did this tall figure look like? Can you describe it?
Similar, yeah, similar to the ones that were in the room with me that appeared in my bedroom, with a very large head, uh, tiny mouth, tiny, very barely a mouth or nose, and super large black eyes, which I thought to be hollowed out, but maybe they weren't. But and bald, no hair at all. So
Let me ask you this, Anne Marie. So the last time you were taken was 9 that you remember. What about when you
yeah,
what about when you started to go into puberty? Did anything happen there?
yes, actually, I was moved. My parents moved me when I was a preteen, like about 10 or so. We moved to the country, 40 miles from the city I was in. And I was about 13 when I had an experience that seemed like a dream, but I mean, I was sleeping in my bed and I definitely recognized some of these beings just hovering over me, the same look, the same type of being that, and I was upset and angry. So I mean, it was as if you have a bad dream and you wake up screaming, but I recognized these in my room or around me. It's hard to say that they were exactly right there, but I recognized them, around me, and started yelling. And I was angry, so I was maybe lashing out. I sat up straight in bed and just was feeling like I will not have this. I felt like I took my power back. And of course, that's the way I was as a teenager too, and I was getting into being a teenager. So um I just yelled, and I don't think I said go away or anything, but I just yelled out like a lion roaring, so to speak, and sat up in bed. And then my dad came from the other room and said, "What's the matter?" And then I told him I think I had a bad dream. But that was the
Last
time
time?
that actually happened at puberty. I think I chased them away then.
And that was the last time you ever saw them.
That's right. I never had another vision or dream or any kind of thing like that.
Encounter. Let me ask you something. Did you ever have any, and this is a very personal question, I get that. Any problems in your reproduction system or any problems with, your monthly
Mhm.
moon cycle, anything like that that might be out of the ordinary?
No, that's a I thought about that, in hindsight after I've heard about a lot of things going on now from other people and other women. And I had two healthy pregnancies, two healthy kids. Um and I never had any kind of problems with that. So I was really glad. I don't know, I really appreciate life and in my kids. So I don't know what I would do if I thought there was some other kids somewhere else where I couldn't help them and be with them.
Now, did your faith in Jesus, did it ever come into play with these entities?
Mhm.
How does that dovetail into the experience?
Oh, that's really, no one's ever asked me that at all. It's really, I have a really strong faith in Jesus. I was baptized Catholic as a little infant, and I was raised that way. And I was actually in grammar school up through age 10, uh, taught religious education every day in a typical Catholic school, or maybe non-typical, because I enjoyed it. And I always felt spiritual and had a very good connection with Jesus. When someone asked me when I was born again, I tell them, oh, probably about 5 years old. And yeah, I still now, I have a really strong faith. And I think, I don't know what am I answering the original question? I can't remember what the original question
Well,
was.
the idea of how does Jesus factor into any of this, especially the last time when you're around 9 years old or 12 or 13, when you stand up and you say, no, go away,
Yeah.
you're
Mhm.
you're yelling at them.
Right. I think by that time I was already in my new house when I was 13. I still, I always my whole life had my faith. So I'm sure that gave me the feeling of, of the personal power to be able to say, to go away. I don't at the moment of that happening, I didn't think of my faith or whatever, but um I think that probably had something to do with it.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. And nothing. How old are your children now?
My daughter would be 35, but unfortunately she passed away about a year ago. But
I'm sorry.
yeah, and that was pretty rough. But my son is now 24. Mhm.
And your daughter never, either child never talked about any similar experiences like you had?
No, they haven't. But they're both, I was just thinking of this today, so I'll mention it. I mean, I don't know if this is related, but they're both called to communion, the sacrament of communion. They both are. So, we haven't had that many discussions of specifically about our faith together, but I know, they're Christian and they both have that calling. So I think that's a important thing.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the record. It's a very interesting story, and I'm glad it
You're
stopped.
welcome.
I'm glad it didn't
Mhm.
continue and other things happen. It's that's why we did the abduction film, because you're not alone. And
Thank
there's
you. Thank
four
you for that.
people. Yeah, well, there's four people that come on the record, and all three of them were taken from a very early age and stopped in the name of Jesus much later in life. Angela was taken later on, but we're not even sure if she just, the screen memories, you talk about the cellar. We call that a screen memory. That's not really where you were, but it looks like that because it's familiar, and they do
Mhm.
that so you'll be put at ease because it's a
Mhm.
familiar place type of a thing. More than likely, that's like a screen memory. But thank you for coming on,
Oh, you're welcome.
and that's why
I,
we do supernatural confrontations. So thank you.
yeah, I did want to mention one thing that I don't know if this is relevant, but I've heard it in some places that to have O negative blood is like common, and I have that type of blood, O negative. It's always perplexed me about how that relates. So,
They the entities, which I believe are nefarious. They are not aliens. They are demonic. It is evil.
oh man.
It is from the pit of hell, the dragon's kingdom. They are trying to create hybrids, and they've become successful with that on some level, which is what our film is about. Um,
Mhm.
and they're looking for certain blood types and also certain DNA. That's all we know. So they may have looked at you for a while because of your blood type, and then figured, nope, this won't work, and they went to someone else.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but that's what, to the best of my knowledge and my ability, as a researcher, it's all conjecture. I'm not saying this is what, because when was the last time you sat down with a fallen angel and said, well, let me ask you something. Why are you? Obviously, that hasn't happened.
Exactly. But I
So
do think that having the sovereignty and the presence of mind when you're in that situation helps so much. I gave them lots of problems when I was with them
yeah.
as a little kid.
Well, thanks.
I don't know if
Thank
it happens
Let
to
me ask you
anyone
one
else
more
now.
question. Were
Mhm.
there other children with you when you were taken?
I don't remember seeing any other children or people. My brother, 2 years younger than me, was in the house at the time, and he's never said anything of that happening to him. But for me, seeing any children, I don't remember that. Now, my experience was in the early 60s, so it could be my experience was one of the first ones, because I know it started around mid 50s, and well, that's what I suspect, started around mid 50s, and maybe it was too early for me to see any of the other things, other things happening, other
Well,
people.
Anne Marie, thank you so much for coming on the record. I know I
You're
appreciate
very
it.
welcome.
Our viewers appreciate it too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So there you go. Here's the deal. People are being taken against their will. Something incredibly nefarious is going on. And for the most part, it's completely hidden. No one knows about it. And you know what? If you go to your parents or your husband or your wife, and you begin, I had these strange entities which came in the middle of the night, and I tried to scream, but I couldn't talk, and they floated me out the window. They're going to look at you like you got three heads, that you're completely certifiable. And yet, we know this for a fact, that this is what happens. How do I know it's a fact? A fact is something that is true. What is true is the four people that come on the record in our new film, The Coming UFO Invasion, exposing the dark secrets of the dragon, and that's what we do. It has come with a price, and that's all I'll say. The attack on our family has been unbelievable in the last several days. Absolutely unbelievable. Is it any coincidence we were on Coast to Coast national radio last week talking about this to perhaps millions of people, exposing the dark secrets of the dragon, exposing the dragon's dark secret, and all of a sudden we're attacked. But guess what? Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. This film comes with a price. I'm willing to pay it. I hope you're willing to pay it also. Folks, please go to lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. Let's circle back to Anne Marie. She was taken against her will. How many times do we have to hear it from all different people, from all walks of life, before we begin to actually believe it and do something for these folks? These folks need your prayers, they need your help. And you know what? Many of them, 3 out of the 4 in the film, evoke the name of Jesus and stop the abductions. There is a name above all other names. It's not a magic word, but wield it in the mouth of a born-again, spirit-filled Christian. It says, wait a minute, you can't do this. You can't touch me. Get out of here. Check it out, folks. UFOs are real, burgeoning, not going away. We've got the 4-pack, all 4 of the DVDs, UFO Disclosure in that. Please check it out. Today is the last day, as I said. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with a very special On the Trail of the Nephilim Report. We're here in another location, and that's all I'll say about that. No, but up tomorrow I'll be interviewing, I'll be on with Prophecy Watchers talking about the film. So more to come. We will do the show tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, there is a supernatural world that surrounds us, and sometimes it manifests to people like you and me. Thanks so much for watching. Something very dark and disturbing is happening. It is a global phenomenon that knows no boundaries and adheres to no cultural mores. And the ones who are engaged in this nefarious activity do so with impunity. People are being taken against their will, in the cover of darkness in the dead of night. They are subjected to bizarre examinations that are often sexual in nature. These people are terrified, violated, confused, and with no place to turn to, as who would believe them? This is their story.